My wife cheated on me while I was saving for her cancer surgery, so I emptied our account and left her to explain it to everyone alone. I'm a 32-year-old guy who thought I was marrying my best friend. Ava and I met in college during a volunteer cleanup event. She was wearing a paint-stained hoodie, humming to herself while picking up trash, and I swear I knew in that moment she was going to change my life. We were young, broke, and stupidly in love. We made plans over ramen, took long walks instead of dates, and used to joke that as long as we had each other, we could survive anything. For a long time, we did. We got married in a courthouse with $600 to our names. Eventually, I landed a stable job in IT, and she started a small online craft store. We weren't rich, but our apartment felt like home. We'd fall asleep watching bad movies on the couch, eating popcorn out of a mixing bowl. Then, everything shifted. Ava was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer just 2 weeks before our 5th anniversary. I remember sitting in that cold fluorescent doctor's office, holding her trembling hand while the oncologist said words like aggressive, uninsured, and limited options. I didn't cry. Not in front of her. But I held her tighter than I ever had before. I threw myself into survival mode. I picked up night shifts, started driving Uber after work, even sold my car, the one thing I'd held on to since college. I told Ava not to worry about the money. I meant it. She was my person. Of course I'd do anything to save her. Everyone said I was husband of the year material. Her family praised me endlessly. Nurses would smile and say, "You don't see many men like you anymore." Ava would nod weakly and squeeze my hand, and I'd feel proud, even in the middle of our worst nights. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that the very person I was breaking myself to save was already breaking me behind my back. The truth shattered me in ways I didn't even know were possible. We'd been married 6 years when Ava got sick. It started with fatigue and bruises that wouldn't fade. I told her to go to the doctor, but she brushed it off, saying she was just tired from work. When the blood tests came back and the doctor said it might be something serious, we both laughed nervously. We didn't want to believe that kind of nightmare could be real. But within days, we were meeting with an oncologist, staring at scan results we didn't understand, and hearing phrases like early intervention, rare subtype, and no definitive treatment covered under your plan. Everything moved fast after that. Too fast, I became a man I didn't even recognize. I stopped hanging out with friends. I skipped work lunches. Every extra dollar I made went into the surgery fund I'd created in a locked savings account. I drove strangers around for hours every night. I pawned my guitar, the one Ava gave me on our first Christmas, without telling her. Even sold my dad's old tools. The sacrifices didn't hurt at first. Not really. Because in my head there was a finish line. Ava healed. Us whole again. Life back to normal. She used to smile at me from the hospital bed and say, "I don't deserve you." I'd kiss her forehead and whisper, "Yes, you do." Because I believed that. With my whole chest. I believed our love was unshakable, looking back now. I think part of me already knew something wasn't right. There were moments, small ones, when she'd pull her hand away too quickly. Or when she'd look away after I said, "I love you." I chalked it up to the chemo, the stress, the pain. I didn't realize I was funding my own heartbreak, and the cracks were just starting to show. At first, I blamed it all on the illness. The mood swings, the distance. The way she stopped laughing at my dumb jokes or left her food untouched, even when I cooked her favorite chicken curry the way her mom used to. I told myself she was tired, in pain, mentally exhausted. But then the little things started piling up. Her phone was always glued to her hand, even when she was half-conscious after a chemo session. She used to leave it lying around unlocked. Now it was always face down, password changed, notifications off. One day, while helping her to bed, I saw a message flash on the lock screen before it dimmed. "I miss you too." The name? Just L. I didn't say anything. Instead, I swallowed it. Tried to act normal. Told myself not to be paranoid, that it could be a friend. Maybe her cousin Lisa. But once the seed was planted, I couldn't stop noticing things, like how she'd suddenly start texting in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Or how she giggled at her phone and immediately shoved it under her blanket when I entered the room. When I'd ask what was funny, she'd snap, "Why are you so nosy lately?" She'd never spoken to me like that before. One night, I stayed awake while she dozed off beside me. Around 1:14 a.m., she quietly slipped out of bed, took her phone, and went to the balcony. I followed a few minutes later and stood silently in the dark, just out of sight. Her voice was soft, but I heard her say it. "I wish you were here instead." I didn't breathe, didn't move, just stood there, frozen. I walked back to bed and lay there wide-eyed until morning, heart pounding like a funeral drum. I told myself I needed proof. Because even with all the signs screaming in my face, I still wanted to believe the woman I was breaking myself to save wasn't the one breaking me. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything snapped. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch after another hospital visit. Her purse was hanging open on the armrest, barely zipped. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. I was grabbing her meds when a crumpled slip of paper caught my eye, a hotel receipt, not just any hotel, a 4-star resort 2 towns over, the kind of place we used to fantasize about staying in once we made it, dated 3 nights ago. 2 guests, 1 king bed, room service at 11 p.m. I sat down right there on the floor. My hands shook as I reread the paper over and over, willing it to change into something else. A receipt from her sister's bridal shower, a billing error, anything that didn't confirm what I already feared, but it didn't lie. When she stirred awake, I tucked it back inside. My voice felt caught in cement. I wanted to ask her, "Where were you that night?" But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I asked if she wanted tea. She smiled, said, "You're too good to me," and curled back into the blanket. The words made my stomach turn. That night, I opened our phone bill online. I didn't even know I had the strength to look, but my fingers typed before I could stop them. Call logs, messages, a number listed as Linda, 342 texts exchanged in the last month, mostly after midnight. I searched it on Facebook. It belonged to a man, dark-haired, gym selfies. Mutual friends from Ava's college. I stared at his profile for an hour, heart beating out of rhythm, until I finally did the unthinkable. I called the number, and when he picked up, what he said confirmed everything I was too afraid to believe. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was casual, soft. "Hey babe, you good?" I didn't say a word. I just stared at the floor, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the sound of his voice. The man who'd been texting my wife every night while I was out driving strangers around just to afford her damn medicine. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "Hello?" Again sounding confused, and I hung up. My thumb was numb. My mouth was dry. I sat there on the edge of our bed, watching Ava sleep peacefully, unaware that everything had just collapsed inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry, I just shut down. The next day I tried something even harder, pretending nothing had happened. I helped her shower. I warmed up soup. I brushed her hair because it had started falling out, and she felt too ashamed to look in the mirror. And still, she had the audacity to grab her phone every time it buzzed and smile into the screen like it was some inside joke I wasn't allowed in on. That night, I broke. I sat down next to her and gently said, "Is there something you're not telling me?" She frowned. "What are you talking about? You've been distant, hiding things. Is there someone else?" She didn't even flinch, just rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Wow. So now I'm cheating because I'm not glued to you every second?" I didn't say that, she cut me off. "You're suffocating me. Everything isn't about you." And just like that, I became the problem. Not the mystery hotel receipt. Not the secret messages. Not the late-night phone calls with a man who called her babe. I realized then. She was never going to confess, because she wasn't sorry, and if I wanted the truth, I'd have to dig deeper and then bleed for it. I hired a private investigator the next day. I know how that sounds. Dramatic. Extreme. But when your world has already cracked at the foundation, you don't wait for it to collapse. You start gathering the rubble before it buries you. I dipped into our emergency fund. Told myself it was for peace of mind, maybe closure. Deep down, I already knew I wouldn't like what I found. What I didn't expect was how bad it really was. The man she'd been texting, the one who answered, "Hey babe," was Eric, her ex-boyfriend, the ex. The one she swore up and down was toxic, controlling, and blocked forever. The one she cried about after too much wine early in our marriage, saying she was glad she escaped him. Yeah, that Eric, They'd reconnected 3 months before her diagnosis, met up for coffee while I was working overtime, then again at a friend's birthday party, and then again in that hotel room 2 towns over, while I was home folding laundry and comparing chemo side effects online, trying to be the perfect support system. The PI gave me everything: call logs, photos, even screenshots of public Venmo transactions where she sent him heart emojis with notes like, "For last night." I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. But the worst part? Her sister's name was on the hotel reservation. I called her, just to test the waters, and said something vague like, "I think Ava might be hiding something." She went quiet. Then she said, "You weren't supposed to find out like this," and hung up. That's when it hit me. They all knew. Her family. Her inner circle. The people who'd praised me as husband of the year. They'd watched me sacrifice everything, while letting her play house with someone else, and not a single one of them stopped her. The night before her surgery, I drove her to the hospital like nothing was wrong. She looked so small in the passenger seat, pale, wrapped in my old hoodie. She held my hand as we walked through the automatic doors, squeezing it like she still loved me. Maybe some part of her did, or maybe it was just fear. I don't know anymore. We checked in, filled out the forms, and then they wheeled her off for pre-op prep. I told her I'd be in the waiting room. She smiled weakly and said, "I'm lucky to have you." I nodded, and then I sat there for 5 hours. The hospital waiting room at 2 a.m. is a cold, soulless place. Beige walls, flickering vending machines, that low, humming buzz of fluorescent lights that somehow makes your skin feel thinner. I was alone. Just me, a styrofoam cup of burnt coffee, and the weight of 6 years of lies sitting on my chest. That's when I finally broke. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Ava always said she was too involved and didn't respect our boundaries. But I needed someone, anyone. When my mom answered and heard my voice, she didn't even ask questions. Just said, "What's wrong, baby?" I told her everything. I told her about the late-night calls, the hotel receipt, the lies, the betrayal, and how I was still sitting here like an idiot, waiting for a woman who shattered me to come out of surgery. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Son, sometimes loving someone too much is the very thing that destroys you." I didn't cry. I wanted to. But I just stared at the linoleum floor until my coffee went cold, and that's when the plan started forming. If nobody else would hold her accountable, I would. When I got home from the hospital, the apartment felt haunted. Her pillow still smelled like the lavender spray she used. The mug she left on the counter had lipstick on the rim. Our wedding photo, the one where I looked at her, like she was my whole future, sat crooked on the shelf like it was mocking me. I stood in the middle of the living room for a long time, and then I walked to my laptop, opened our joint savings account, and transferred every last cent, $47,129.38, into a private account in my name only. I left just enough in checking for her cab ride home. Next, I packed a bag. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my passport, and a thumb drive with all the receipts, phone logs, and screenshots the PI gave me. I walked into the bedroom, sat down at her side of the desk, and wrote a note on a plain piece of printer paper. "You wanted freedom. Now explain this to your family. I won't be here when you get home." I left it on her pillow under the edge of her wedding ring. Then I shut off my phone, locked the apartment behind me, and drove. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, just disappeared into the night like a ghost escaping his own funeral. My uncle used to own a cabin 3 states away, tucked behind a lake and some pine trees that looked like they belonged in a postcard. He passed last year but left me the keys. I hadn't visited since the funeral. That's where I went. No GPS, no messages, no goodbyes, and for the first time in 6 years, I slept through the night, but the fallout, that came faster than I expected. I turned my phone back on after a week of silence. I'd been holed up in the cabin, chopping wood I didn't need, walking trails that led nowhere, and sitting by the lake staring into the water like it held answers. The quiet was loud, but not in a bad way. It was the first time I heard my own thoughts without guilt screaming over them. But when I finally powered up my phone, it buzzed nonstop for 6 straight minutes. There were 37 voicemails, 12 texts. Ava's mom, her sister, even her best friend from college. And none of them asked what she did, they just asked what I had done. Why would you abandon her like this? She just had surgery, how could you do this now? She told us everything. She said you snapped and ran away. You're heartless. She's sick. She needed you. Message after message, all dripping with rage and pity. None of it for me. But then came the one I wasn't prepared for. Eric. He texted me from a number I didn't recognize at first. Just one sentence, you broke her. She needed both of us. I stared at the screen like it was a live wire. Both of us. The audacity of that text. As if I hadn't drained myself to keep her alive. As if his name belonged in the same sentence as mine. As if showing up to sneak around behind my back qualified him as anything other than a parasite. That text broke something in me. Because in that moment, I knew. None of them were actually sorry. None of them felt remorse for what they let happen, only anger that I stopped playing the fool. And that's when I decided it was time to stop staying quiet. If they wanted the truth, I'd give it to them. With receipts, I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone back. I didn't even respond to Ava. Instead, I spent the next 2 hours carefully compiling everything. Every screenshot, every hotel receipt, every text message she'd sent to Eric, the private investigator's report. A copy of the call logs. I even attached the Venmo screenshots where she'd sent him money labeled with, "For last night." Then I wrote one group email. No dramatic paragraphs. No emotional breakdown. Just a subject line that read, "Truth hurts more than chemo, doesn't it?" And in the body I wrote, "Since you all think I abandoned her out of nowhere, here's the version she forgot to tell you." Attached were 12 files. I sent it to everyone who had called, texted, or guilted me in the past week. Her mom, her dad, her sister, her 2 best friends. Even Eric. I found his email linked to one of his old social accounts. Then I closed my laptop and went outside. The air felt different afterward. Lighter, like I'd finally put the weight back where it belonged. On them. The fallout started within hours. Her aunt emailed me an apology. Said she had no idea, and that if she'd known, she would have never come after me. Her dad? Never replied, but his Facebook page went dark. Her sister blocked me on everything. And Eric? Gone, deleted. His Instagram wiped, his Facebook account deactivated. Just gone. The silence after that was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. I didn't need them to like me. I didn't need revenge that burned everything to the ground. I just needed them to stop looking at me like I was the villain in a story she wrote. But of course, Ava wasn't done, because 6 months later, after the dust had settled, she tried to come back. It was exactly 6 months to the day when her name showed up in my inbox. Subject line, "Please read this." I stared at it for a while before opening it. Part of me had already moved on. Not to someone else, just back to myself. But curiosity? That's a hard thing to kill. Her email started off with a list of things she said she'd realized. That she'd been selfish. That trauma made her make bad choices. That she never stopped loving me. She wrote about missing my jokes, the way I'd tuck her blanket under her feet without asking, the sound of my voice reading the back of medicine bottles like I was solving a crime. She said she wanted to talk. Not to get back together right away, she wrote, just to have one honest conversation. Then she asked if we could start again, clean slate, no judgment. But buried beneath all the poetic regret was the part that really told the story. I've had to move back in with my parents. Things haven't been easy financially since the surgery. That's when it clicked. It wasn't love. It wasn't healing. It wasn't even guilt. It was survival. Eric had ghosted her. Her family was ashamed. Her online business tanked. And now she wanted back into the life of the man who once gave up everything for her, in hopes that maybe he'd do it again. I reread her email twice. Then I opened a new message and typed one sentence. You didn't lose a husband. You lost the last person who actually believed you were a good one. And I hit send. That was it. No insults. No open wounds. Just a truth she couldn't rewrite. You know what they don't tell you? They don't tell you that closure isn't loud. It's not some cinematic moment with screaming tears or perfectly delivered last words. Sometimes it's just silence. A silence that doesn't ache anymore. After I sent that final message, I didn't hear back. Not from her, Not from her family, not from anyone who once sang my praises when I was breaking my back to keep her alive. And that was fine. I didn't need them to reply. I didn't need their guilt. I needed peace. And I finally had it. I stayed at the cabin longer than I thought I would. Got a remote job. Started fishing. Learned how to fix things without watching YouTube tutorials. I even taught myself how to make the kind of sourdough bread Ava used to beg me to buy. I ate the first loaf alone, barefoot on the porch, watching a thunderstorm roll in, and I didn't feel bitter. I felt clean. People think revenge is screaming at someone, burning their stuff, posting screenshots. But real revenge? It's healing when they expected you to stay broken. It's sleeping well while they replay every lie they ever told. I've thought about dating again. Haven't done it yet. I'm still getting reacquainted with the man I used to be, the one who used to laugh easily, trust openly, and love without keeping score. I don't hate Ava, but I'll never thank her, either. She showed me the kind of man I am when pushed to my edge, and the kind of man I'll never be again for someone who can't meet me halfway. So no. I didn't leave her out of cruelty. I left her because I realized, finally, that saving someone who's drowning you isn't love. It's self-destruction, and I choose peace now. Every time.